Alrighty then. I think we're going. Let's do a quick audio check. Tommy, give me some audio.
Check 1, 2, 3.
Got it. Seth, give me a little bit of audio.
Check 3, 2, 1.
Oh man, getting fancy on me. All right, I think we've got all the audios. For those of you who are joining in the chat window, please comment if there's any audio issues on your side. I think we've gotten dialed in. Michael just keeps buying junk and stuff's happening. Hence the new microphone. We keep getting more gear to make things happen. So I'm gonna kick it right over to Dan. Or Dan. What am I saying, Dan? Tommy. What am I thinking? I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing Dan Meisler on the chat here. Thank you guys for joining. I'm all confused. There's too many screens. We're gonna kick it over to Tommy. Tommy's running our show tonight. He's doing the Chicago user group, and we'll do all our introductions. Tommy, kick it off, bud.
Awesome. Hey guys, for those, since it is, I guess, technically the Chicago user group, welcome for all people who usually come. If you're new to the Chicago user group, welcome. For those who are in Milwaukee or just found out about this by chance, my name is Tommy Puglia. I'm based in Chicago. Been working with Mike and Seth. Basically, as Seth said, I've been doing Power BI for 5+ years. Finally, really happy, excited to kind of do this joint session together.
Cool. So Seth and I represent the Milwuakee Brew City user group, and we are now the Power Platform user group. We've kind of rebranded our name for this year. So we're trying to include some talks around Power BI, some Power Apps. We had a session yesterday that will be coming out hopefully on YouTube the next day or so around how to build a Power App that's basically a inventory management tool. So my name is Mike Carlo. I run the website Power BI Tips with Seth Bauer. We just love talking data and being goofballs together. So if all things go well, you'll see more of us, hopefully. if there are views, we'll keep doing it. So I'll kick it over to Seth.
Yeah, name is Seth Bauer. Run Power BI Tips with Mike, and apparently I need to get some more lighting because
it's a bit darker over there.
I look dark. Glad to be here, Tommy. Excited to hear what you're going to talk about tonight, and glad we can bring the groups together.
Yeah, we should have done this a long time ago.
Yeah,
absolutely.
This really was born out of Michael being lazy because I was like, Tommy, I got nothing to talk about. And Tommy's like, oh, I got something to talk about. I'm like, all right, let's do Tommy's thing. So Tommy's like, yeah, I'm presenting. So Tommy's presenting this week, and then we're going to trade a favor. So we have for next month, we're going to do the same kind of format. We're going to still be online. We're going to stream it through YouTube to try and get a lot of people involved. Please chat in the chat window, ask questions as we go. That's the intent of this, is to be interactive, and we'll banter back and forth and talk through your questions. But next month at our Power BI Milwuakee user group, which will be the same video format here that you have, we're going to have Matthew Roach come over and talk about data culture. So our user group and Dan from our user group, who's here on the video, welcome Dan, asked, hey, we need to have Matthew Roach show up and talk to us. We're like, well, we know the guy, so we're gonna go see if we can talk with us. So Matthew graciously volunteered and is gonna help us out, and he's gonna talk next week, and it'll be the last Tuesday of every month.
And then for everyone who's part of the Chicago user group, we'll be doing the joint and piggybacking off of them. So I'll be on with them as well. But that's your user group for May too. So
Tommy's being lazy next month. He's gonna make him work hard now. You can take a break next month. So we'll see how this content goes. If you like the content, let us know. Please comment. If you like how this is the format it is. If there are any suggestions, please let us know. We're happy to take feedback. We may not listen to you, but we'll take feedback. All right, Tommy, kick it away, bud.
All righty, guys. So before we get into the meat of it, let's get into straight. If I can pull this back up again, let's go straight into just a few quick updates for the user group, and then just some Power BI updates. So first, thank you for you, as always, for the Chicago user group. For anyone who's joined a user group or anyone who's watching right now, you're doing this after work, for work, on a work week to learn more about work. So, we hope that we make it worth your while. That's something that we always strive to do with these sessions. Whether through networking, learning, or discovering new things. So just thank you for being a part of the user group and being part of the community. So we're going to go through some quick Power BI user group updates. We did talk about this a little at our last meeting, but some important things to know. So first up, user groups are now public preview on community.powerbi.com. If you are used to or have been part of a user group for a while, you probably go on meetup.com, and you've probably gone to DAC or DCI, Dynamic Communities. Forever, they've always been the one who's kind of affiliated, worked with Microsoft to kind of host, managing the national user groups, the big conferences, and usually where we had a lot of our files and discussions and, kind of the forum. So this is a slow migration, but join to the community.powerbi.com. You can go to user groups. You sign in the normal way you would on community.powerbi.com, so it's very seamless. So let's kind of talk, what does this mean for us? What does it mean for you in terms of, am I going to find new user group events? Do I have to go to DCI anymore? This is a slow migration. People that are part of the Chicago user group know that I say anytime Power BI or Microsoft releases something and there's parentheses preview, that means at your own risk. And this is definitely in private preview. So there's a lot of somewhat bugs, but this is something that we plan to be migrating over to as well. Don't worry though, we'll still be posting our events and announcements on Meetup, LinkedIn, and community.powerbi.com. So some of you who follow PowerBI.tips might have seen on LinkedIn, they posted 2 polls about how do you find user group events and what's your preferred way. That wasn't random. That was actually a conversation me and Mike were having about, if we're not going to use Meetup, if we're not going to, the community.powerbi site is great, but obviously, that migration, what does that look like? So we're just saying, well, how do people normally get their information about a user group that's happening? So we're going to start relying more on LinkedIn, on the company page for Chicago user groups. And we'll be hosting and kind of announcing our events on LinkedIn. We'll still do Meetup, so you'll still always get the emails from Meetup, but more discussions and more activities going to be happening with the LinkedIn page. And again, moving forward, just because they're so fun, we're going to join and kind of team up with the Milwaukie user group more in the future. 1, no one has to travel. 2, it's super fun. So, I know we want to do this before the whole, what we would all call a global pandemic. We've talked about this before. No need to get into that anymore. But plan is to do some more joint things because 1, we want to deliver better content. I don't want to sound like I'm talking conspiracy theories in my basement alone. So hopefully the more engagement for you guys is going to make it better content. And also, just for that community feel. So join the LinkedIn page. More people find user groups there than anywhere else. You can follow us. You'll find all the events. We'll have discussions. We have no job openings, as you can see here. But if you want to apply as an intern, please.
I love it. We need interns. I think this is a great idea,
right?
Tommy. Why haven't we been doing this before?
I don't know what they would do yet. So
we'll figure out what to do with them. Please apply if you'd like to be an intern. We can't pay you anything, and the benefits are horrible, but we would love.
Nor can I sign any documents that you volunteered for times.
Love it.
I'm not authorized at all.
Tommy, real quick,
yeah.
Tommy, all the links for as you were mentioning them, I was trying to fire them out as quickly as I could. So check the chat. I've got the Chicago user group that's there. I had the Milwaukie user group that's found on the new communities.powerbi.com. I also have included the LinkedIn pages. There's a company page for the Chicago group that Tommy is showing you here. And there's also a LinkedIn page for Power BI tips. All those areas, we're going to try and be as social as we can and make it as easy and frictionless for you to find our events and our things on there and on Meetup. So if you just tag us in one of the socials, we'll be able to grab onto you and you'll be able to know what the new events and meetings are coming up to. Thanks, Tommy.
Awesome. So yeah, the community, again, as of now, kind of full steam in the same direction, Meetup, and we'll be relying on LinkedIn. So let's jump into a few things that came out just a week ago, I believe, some big updates in the Power BI world. We talked about this on MVP's React a little, but I'm going to kind of go through this real quick. Just some updates from Power BI. Power Automate Visual for Power BI is it public preview or it's public preview? They don't do anything GA right off the bat.
Yeah, I believe this is public preview right now.
Yeah. So Power Automate Visual for Power BI. Charticulator, which I cannot say, but I can read it. Mike, please say it.
Charticulator
is now available. If you've never heard about that, go follow Power BI tips on YouTube and get your mind blown. They have updated shapes, so now they're on par with PowerPoint, and a really cool new data set hub for your users. So let's kind of dive into the first idea when it comes to this Power Automate visual and a few ideas. And I think there's a lot going on here with what you can do with this. So I'm in Power BI, and again, I already have this at desktop. You just go to get more visuals. And what I'm very passionate about is trying to get feedback from users. You know, we get the audit logs and the activity, but how do people actually like a report? So the first idea I had with using the automated visual was a net promoter score. Just like how likely would you refer someone to the report? So all you have to do is just drag a few data fields to a Power Automate visual, click on Edit, and it brings up a full screen here where it actually shows you some flows that could be intertwined with Power Automate. So I'll show you the one that's already applied to this one. So we'll go to this guy here, and we're going to click on the edit icon, and you can see automatically in the app it already knows that we're going to get triggered by Power BI. So when a Power BI button is clicked, and all I'm doing here is simply, getting the data, and remember, it remembers the measures, the fields, and basically I created a SharePoint list that's going to log all of the scores. You notice that it was 1 through 7 on the Power BI report. Apparently, Google did a mass research on polling and feedback where 1 to 7 is a better way to kind of assess someone's actual satisfaction or quality of the product or feeling. So anytime you're trying to say how did you like dinner, say 1 through 7, not the 1 through 10. So you can see here I just added the report name, the username, user principal name, and then the value of the score, and that's all I have to do. And I click save. I go back, and what I have to do in order to bind it to this report is you have to click apply. Now it's applied to this report. So let's go back over here. I'm going to go into reading view. Any user that comes in here, can just basically choose what they're looking at. By the way, this also works on any filters I did. So you can do this for anything. If you're like, what were you clicking on? And if I was clicking on, let's say 2015 for the ALCS or the American League Central, it could follow that. I don't have that data in the Power Automate visual, but I'm going to say I'm going to give this guy a nice 7. I'm going to click this trigger, and then what's going to happen is you'll see now right into the SharePoint list, you can see here that ratings added, and then you can build a report off of that. So that's a really neat way to just get quick ratings back from users on how they're enjoying a particular report. I would love for it to only show up if they've already submitted a rating and hide it. I don't know who that question's for, but that's obviously something pretty cool. So, but yeah, that's just a very simple way to use the Power Automate visual. And again, you can set this up for, someone getting feedback of, a particular product's wrong. So I imagine the Power Automate visual being used a lot on drill through pages where it's the product details or company details, for sales team to kind of start the process to create an activity for a product to, say product details need to be changed. It already knows all the information. A person just has to click with some text and getting that kind of sent through the Power Automate. So to me, this is way more, one of the most powerful things they've come up with. I cannot wait to see what people start writing about this in the use case and examples. So guys, have you started using this at all?
I got to be honest, I have not played with it yet. It is on my docket to try and play with it a bit more. Oh, we lost your video there, Tommy. I think I got to... No, it's not you, it's me.
Okay. I've heard that before.
I'll have to work on that one. So I was trying to bring us all up in the threes here. I haven't played with it yet. It's on my docket to go through it a bit more. And this is like one of the first clean demos I've seen. A lot of people have played with it, but it hasn't quite worked right. So that's a great demo, Tommy. I like it.
Thank you. As simple as it gets.
Yes.
So the other thing is the charculator. I'm not going to say it right, but I'm going to just refer you to, that's actually us. That's not the one I want to do. It was this one.
Yes.
So if you have not gone to Power BI Tips on YouTube, Mike has already put together, I believe, 8 now or
9.
What are we at?
We're up to 9. Yeah, we're up to 9 videos.
So this visual is pretty incredible. I'm not even going to try to go through it, but if you never heard of it, when you want to talk about, I had an idea for a visual
Yep.
and I didn't know how to do it. This visual is exactly what to do. So Mike's, I'm sure he'll send a link, but to get started, this is not your straightforward visual. This is not your granddaddy's visual. So please make sure to watch the videos that Mike's doing. It's an incredible tool, and I am personally interested to see how people start really applying this in Power BI.
I think
So-
this is. I think honestly, this is a game changer for a lot. I think there's a lot of standard stuff that comes out of the box, but there's always like a lot of one-off little edge case things here, and I think this Charticulator thing solves a lot of those problems. I've been a huge fan of this since I learned about Charticulator way back in like late 2018, early 2019. I can't remember exactly when. It's incredible. So now that they're baking it into the product, I'm super pleased with this. And you could tell by my 9 videos of enthusiasm, I'm all about the Charticulator. I hate the name. It is very hard to say. I'm
Yes.
100% on that, Tommy there. But it's going to be amazing. Stay tuned. More content coming. Please comment in the videos there if you want to see something that I haven't done. I'm grooming the videos actively for new ideas, and I'll do what the people want.
Give the people what they want.
Give the
Exactly.
people what
Yeah.
they want.
So stay tuned for that, because I think this is one of those things where rather than like drill through or someone could start doing it right away, it may take a few weeks or months to start seeing a lot of content on, people really testing it out, because I think there's a bit of a ramp up, but stay tuned to Power BI tips, because I think he's all in already with this. So
I'm all in on it.
the last thing is, as we use more in Power BI, really is focusing on the enterprise. They've really been focusing on the biggest feature I think this year for 2021, or I think the last 12 months, in my personal opinion, is being able to do a live connection to a Power BI data set, but do a composite model. So before you could connect to a live data set in Power BI, but you couldn't do anything else. You couldn't add a column, you couldn't add any other data sources. Now you can. You can actually make the Power BI live connection a direct query, and then add in multiple Power BI data sets, add in SQL, add in SharePoint, Excel, whatever your heart's desire. To me, this is an absolute game changer. However, this is going to lead to a lot of dependencies and chaining, and this data set's connected to 15 reports. How do you manage that? And I think the biggest thing is for users, because again, none of us are doing Power BI just for ourselves. Probably someone else looks at our reports. So how can users, kind of understand the data sets and what reports are connected to it? So one thing they have now in Power BI, you might have already seen it, because they do things without you allowing it to actually become available in your tenant. It's called the Dataset Hub. And basically what it does is for data sets for all the users, that you can basically see different reports, all the data sets in your workspace. And what you can do is you can actually click on a report, and you can see actually related reports. So that's any data set or any report that might have a live connection or that direct query. So having that chained reaction, which is really cool. Another thing you can do to empower for that self-service side of things is you can actually create a template for people. And all you have to do is copy a report in the service, add parentheses template. And then what you can do is you can actually say, create a report. You can say from scratch or from a template. And then that basically puts someone right into a report that they can start visualizing and working on. So this is a really neat way, again, if you want people to do this, but for those people who are more analytically minded, you can kind of give them that data set, the theme, everything ready to go all in the service. So I think there's a whole other discussion on the, what can you give access to, what should people see, but just wanted to kind of provide that update. It's really cool. Try to make sure things look right in there too for your users. So, I think this is more of a word of caution in case a lot of the data or the data sets you don't want everyone to be seeing. So take a look at that for the sake of CYA as well. But yeah, so that's the last kind of major update in Power BI.
Awesome
All
update.
right.
I like the
Yeah.
wrap up, Tommy. That's a good wrap up there. I think that those things are key. And actually, if you are familiar with the Power BI tips, themes and scrims, those actually fit very well in this templating portion, where we can actually very quickly jump over to, hey, we've got this really interesting report, it's ready to go, and we can kind of start baking out some of our company templates. So we're exploring right now how to use this, how to make it better, and how to get this integrated. But I think today you can go grab templates from, there's some free ones out there at Power BI Tips. You can go download them now, try it for yourself, add the underscore template in it, and it will automatically connect a PBX file with no data set directly to a data model for you. So it can really speed up a lot of report building for you by using that technique.
Yeah. So again, I really encourage, just if you're an admin or you can manage a lot of data and a lot of people use reports, take a look at that to make sure everything looks right. So those are major update, guys. You have anything else before we go into the meat of the night?
Let me check the comments here. Grooming through some comments. Marcus says, really cool. Can I use the Power Automate to update a database being displayed in my dashboards? For example, I'd like to update a forecast on my reports by adjusting the numbers. Totally possible. So
yeah,
anything Power Automate touches, you can fire off anything from Power Automate into anywhere else that you need it to go. So as long as it knows how to edit or update or add a record into that database with the proper information, you can structure it so we can update forecast numbers for you directly in that format. Again, you have to kind of bolt all the things together, but it should allow you to touch anything. I'd also say that in there as well, if you're doing logic apps, you would have to make sure that you have the proper data fields coming in, because it's a premium connector, I think, to connect to like a SQL DB. So you have to look at licensing as well. There's a premium upcharge kind of for those SQL special connector pieces. So you just want to be mindful of those in addition to that.
I don't know if you guys actually heard too, what you can actually do if you really want to refresh your report is there's 2 new actions in Power. Yeah. So basically you can actually refresh a data flow now, any data flow, which is so cool. So let's say you have an audit log and you just want to track any modifications. So anytime an item is modified in SQL, refresh the data flow, and then when that data flow refreshes, if it was successful, do a condition, refresh the Power BI data set. So
that one's out there too, and those are in Power Automate. Those are actions that are already available to us, like ready to go. So there's no extra coding. Very easy to get those started.
Yeah, and so to that question, you could do that what if parameter. You could do the what if parameter and kind of skip automate, but if it's in this, let's say, AI model, you could kind of configure a few filters of what if parameters in Power BI, click on automate, and then send it to kind of bake in a data flow, especially if you have all the AI data flows in there.
Let's see, I'm looking through some more in there. Dan says Charticulator and Deneb will be great extension to the standard video sets. So there's another project that was released, not on the Microsoft blog. Another friend of ours, Daniel Marsh Patrick, released another really cool data visualization tool. Bit more on code. It's not as straightforward as Charticulator when you're dragging and dropping. The project is called Project Deneb, and it's actually based off of Vega and Vega Lite, which are graphical programming languages. You use JSON essentially to write out what the graphic visual will look like. So those are coming out soon. I have plans to do a bit more videos around those. Okay. So here's another question from Dan. When you're saving off a report using the template file, it only saves to their My Workspace. And so that's a really good point that Dan makes out here. When you're using the template portion, it's not allowing you to reshare that template file back into a workspace. And Tommy and I will grimace at this all day long, because this now creates a lot of content in people's local workspaces, which is not advisable. We would prefer you do all your content sharing inside the workspaces. So just be aware of that if you're using that feature. That's a great point. And the last question here is from another Daniel. Can I create one report with 2 databases?
Yeah, you could create 2. I'm sure it means live connections. So you can create one report within Power BI Desktop, connect to, I think it's 20. You can probably connect to definitely over 5, but I think the limit's pretty high. So you can connect to whatever your heart desires in terms of Power BI data sets. So that's more than possible. And that's already been something we've implemented at CompTIA.
And Tommy,
Just-
are you referring
yeah.
to the feature set of direct query over analysis services? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So for Daniel, I'm going to try and find the blog article on this one, but there is direct query over analysis services, and then you can have, for multiple databases, you can use Power BI to connect to any number of databases as you want and bring in tables from any of them. So that's built into the box with Power BI. There's a new feature where you can have data models and a third data model that looks at two different data models. So now you can do models of models, which is really kind of interesting too. And that's a newer feature that's come out. It's still, I think it's still in public preview, but really exciting. A lot of people are starting to play with it and use it now. So there's some really, really neat stuff coming from the Power BI team coming up.
Yeah, and I think too, especially with a very large data set, I'm sure they'll come out in the future with, being able to choose perspectives, because right now perspectives are only to visuals. I by the way, I dived into way too much of that and could not figure it out. And I literally got into like the metadata in a Power BI desktop because I was like, this is probably going to break something. So,
all right, come prepared next month for a demo, Tommy. You're demoing it next month.
Hopefully there's an update so I can show you. Here's how to break your report.
Exactly.
That's the session. So.
All right.
Here's to do irreparable damage.
And with that, we're out of questions. You can go ahead onto the main show. So go ahead and share your screen again, and then I'll get you piped back up in here again, and let's do a quick check on that one. And all right, we've got you, Tommy. You're back on with the slides are good to go.
All righty. So this is again the heart of the meeting here, and we're really excited to kind of talk about this in terms of, there's been a few meetings that we've had at the Chicago User Group on, report development, governance and adoption, just basically those kind of ideas. And this is kind of a mix of all of this, but in a really different way in terms of you can develop a report, you can, have the restrictions and the standards around a report, but, getting to the heart of the matter, like what makes someone look at your report and what makes them desire to go back to look at it. And that's basically what we're going to talk about today. So, we're going to talk about why should someone use your report? Why use your visuals? Some of the misconceptions and where things usually go wrong in terms of a report that had a lot of hype, that, the pressure was on from your boss to the department, to the stakeholders saying, we need this report, and it's gotten 10 views in a month. And, that we've all been there with that. There's a letdown, there's anger, there's, you're trying to figure out what happened to where this report's not being used. Is it providing that insight that people wanted? Again, because if you spend 20 hours on something, that's 20 hours of your work time that, in terms of don't want to say it's wasted, but at the same point, what's the value that we're providing? And maybe that's just me because I'm always fearing, basically every hour I spend, like, is this providing value? So, and then we're going to talk about what things can we do to kind of avoid, those types of situations and just getting it right. So, I think this is I'm not going to worry about that right now. So again, just in case you guys don't know, my name is Tommy Puglia with the Chicago User Group. We'll hope to meet downtown at some point this year. We'll see. I don't know. I give up. Maybe you'll see me downtown, but hopefully we can meet up at some point. Again, we're doing everything online, but I've been a pleasure working at CompTIA here in Chicago, and just basically, kind of working on, everything in-house and really working on that adoption and getting people to drive a data culture, getting people to use data, to alter their behavior. So let's kind of go into our quick introduction into why would someone use your dashboard? Why would someone make your report? Use your report and want to go back to it. People are selfish, and what I mean by that is, they're not going to feel bad. If they view a report and it provides some value, they don't see reports the way we do. To us, we developed it. We created the data model. For some of our reports, we didn't know how we were going to connect and relate different tables together, and we found a really neat way to do a pivot and a group by, and unpivoted columns, and it was so cool. And we got this model together, so now we can connect customers to everything that they've done. And we are so excited about what we've been able to create in the model. We created these visuals that were super advanced, and these metrics. We found something new in DAX. No one cares about that, in terms of, they don't know the effort that went into that. And again, if it's not helping them, or not providing value, or something that's going to drive a decision, everything else is kind of out the window. So that really starts with, when you're developing any report, know who you're building it for. Everyone's looking at a report. Anyone's driven to look at a certain report or go back to look at a report because it's going to help them drive better actions. It's going to help them make a decision that previously they wouldn't be able to. One thing I used to ask when we would do scoping meetings, but I've lost the way to say it without, I think, offending people, was but the idea that you want to get across with, when you're building a report is, for this team or this audience I'm building this report for, what are their day-to-day responsibilities? What are they responsible for? What's going to get them fired? What's going to get them promoted? Whether it's sales, whether it's product and operations, whether it's marketing, what are those things that they have to do for their job? And starting at that point really helps you kind of first hone in on what you need to build and what's important to them. And there are different audience types, not just different sales teams, but there's also the big part of, some people are more analytically, friendly than others. Some people get overwhelmed by data in the first place. Some people like to dive in and click and drag and drill through, and they love all those features. Some people just want an arrow going up and could care less if there's a number. They just want to know if it's up, down, good or bad. So knowing your audience, and that's part of wearing another hat in what we do, is not just being data analysts or but being in business intelligence, but it's really becoming familiar with the people, the people in your clients or the different sales teams, or who's requesting the report. Understanding that person, their personality, goes into a report. Take an example. If you were building a report for your significant other, for, let's say, looking at house prices, you already know how you're going to build that report, what's going to help them. If you will say you wanted to live in a certain zip code, you already know, because you know that person intimately. So if you build advanced analytics and a pivot table, that's not going to help them, or maybe that will, but because you know that person. So helping them in what's driving their decisions. If it's an email campaign report, how important are sends over time compared to sends by campaign? So understanding different audience types is kind of your first starting point. So let's get this basic idea of visualization. And there is so much around here. And again, this is not so much on data visual theory. There are more smart and intelligent people out there than myself. Some amazing books in terms of what does a layout look like, top left to right, where do people's eyes go, what color should you use? We're not going to focus on that so much in terms of more of what the visuals are supposed to provide to a user. And one thing that you're going to see a lot in these slides, and because I really want to drill it in, is my goal when I build a report, and I think all of our goals, is the ideal report is a visual, and the data should behave the same way that text does. So what does that exactly mean? So take your day tomorrow morning. You're going to check your email. You're going to check Microsoft Teams or Slack. You may have a message from a teammate, from a executive, from a client saying, hey, this report's we need to add sales over 12 months rolling to this report. That text gives you action for the day. So we can take the text, all these different characters, 26 characters in the alphabet, combine them, process it, and make a decision. that's the same thing any visual should do, is help people in that same way take all these different data points, a bar chart with these colors, that's an aggregate with these fields, but help someone be able to process it to help make a decision. It's just another source of information that, should lead someone to say, hey, I need to look into this, or this is going great, or we shouldn't spend this money here. So again, it's, every report has a certain purpose. Every report has, an intention. I always go back to Steve Jobs when he released the iPad, I think in 2010. He said basically like, what's the purpose of the iPad? He's like, is it better than a smartphone at looking at the, looking at your messages? Is it better on a Macintosh for, working? Well, if it doesn't do any of those better, then it has no reason for being. That always stuck out to me because the iPad had a specific purpose. It was better at reading, it was better at browsing the web, it was better at looking at your pictures, and that's kind of exactly where it fit. And in the same way, every single report that you have published to the service should have a specific purpose that you can easily explain, an intention and an audience. If it kind of just there, or it overlaps with a lot of other reports, maybe it's not needed, because again, it's now you're just kind of adding clutter. And there's also that clear purpose. If you can't think of the clear purpose of what this report's supposed to do, do you think your users are going to have a better idea?
Hey Tommy, there's a really good comment here that someone came in. George said, hey, another way of saying this is like, in other words, what's in it for me? I guess it's kind of the acronym WIGFM, I guess, WIIFM. And I thought that's a really interesting point, because if we're showing up and we're not getting value, and I really like your invoking behavior here, and Seth and I, we say it in a different way, but we're saying the same thing that you're doing, Tommy, here, is we say, define the insights. What do I want to tell you? There's a message I'm trying to give you with that information, and how are we conveying that message to you? And so we do a lot of heavy emphasizing, define what is important and let people know where that importance is coming from. So I think these are great talking points here. And I can't stress your third bullet point there, invoking behavior. What do I do with this? If I'm just dumping tables of data, that's not what we really should be doing with this. We should be thinking through like, how do we leverage this stuff so that we can drive someone to take action? Let's look at building, let's go talk to our sales team. Let's make different goals. Let's change our objectives so we can meet some kind of, longer term goal or objective with these. That's what our report should be doing. They should be driving for action. And frankly, I mean, there's probably multiple pages in your reports, and maybe you throw detail deeper in the report somewhere, but those first couple of pages are going to be, what are the action? We want people in those reports all the time, every day.
No, and you're absolutely right, because again, we can get into the weeds, and what we do is like, oh, I added this new, you select this and now look what happens here. And oh, there's a cool drill through. Look at all this information you get. But, for a lot of users, most users you talk to, they didn't know you could right click on a visual,
yes.
And it's like, and then more or less they're going to click on the fourth one down.
Yep.
You could add the button for the drill through, but still, is that intuitive for them? More people are going to, if you go to a website, or if you, bought an application and you had no idea where to start, Charticulator, as you said, kind of thing. Like, yes. Is a good example of like, where do I start with this? Where's the doc? Kind of like what am I supposed to do with this? Yes. And in the same way, again, for someone we are all analytically minded. So, and we also built it, so we know how everything works, but for most people, they don't know that you can even click on, January 2020 and have that pivot table filter. Yeah. And again, is that even important to them? Because it's cool. It's like, oh yeah, look, you can see the sales by, product. Well, okay, well, that's not what I'm, that's not going to get me coming back to January of 2020, to this report.
And I'm smiling here because Seth is quiet, but I know Seth has opinions on reports and audience, and how important it is to match up your audience with what kind of report you're building.
Yeah, I have a lot of opinions about this. You take the context in what we're framing, right? And George is hitting that piece of, I think what we as report authors miss a lot, right? Which is, what's in it for me? You're presenting something to the end users, so what? Right? That's another, like, to me, those are indicators that you haven't fundamentally hit the one thing you need to as a report developer, which is, what are the actions that they're going to take after they view your report, right? Like, we talk about, actions and what they want and what they want to see, but like, unless you put yourself in the perspective of the end user
Yes.
and interact with that report in that way,
Yep.
like we have a tendency to add a little too much or miss the really key parts of why you're developing or putting a report there. For example, right? Like, if I don't understand, if I have a fully scoped, I completely understand what the user wants. Like, I might not have the slicer I usually stick over here because there's no relevance. They're not gonna add. It's not gonna add any value to that person because they never look at the data that way. Whereas my understanding of the data, why wouldn't you want to look at things by
Right.
brand, right? And I think locking in and making sure that the actions, the outcomes or the decisions that are being made by the end user are what's relevant in the particular view that we're showing. And that's how we avoid or make the right things and avoid some of the mistakes of adding too much or not being clear with our story.
And I want to bring in a point here too, like really depending. I mean, let's talk about levels of organization here real quick. Tommy, I don't want to slow you down too far here, but like I think there's really clear roles in a company that define what level of data we can throw at people. Like I can't tell you how many times as you walk your way up an organization, you will find the higher levels of the organization, we're not necessarily looking for drill down and clicking and a lot of extra, feature buzz around the report. We're really trying to do like that. Is it up? Is it down? Is it red or is it green? Like we're trying to make it very clear. Like, again, I think as we get higher up in our organizations, we find time becomes incredibly valuable. That glance at a report is becoming very important. An overview page is essential. And then for the analytical leaders that are, VP and directors or C-level people, they may be very comfortable drilling into the data on their own elsewhere in the report. But I think that initial glance or that initial look at the report has to be very catered to that experience. And then on the other end, let's talk analysts. They can handle a lot more charts. You can throw tables and visuals and graphs and like weeding through, clicking on things. And I think there's a lot more exploratory type report building when you get to that end of the spectrum versus maybe at the other end where we're trying to do key insights. Maybe thoughts on your guys on that one though, Tommy? Maybe what do you think?
And I think what you just said kind of hits the heart of it, because doing that basic, simple, overview sometimes is so hard because you have all this data underneath that you feel like it doesn't do justice to the data model.
Totally.
To only have an up and down areas. Like, there's so much data behind this, and you just have let's say a thumbs up.
Yeah.
And that's what your report's doing. But
yes.
and you're like, surely there must be more. And that's what I say to myself all the time.
But I could build Charticulator. Like, why not?
That's right. Well, just like, you need a bar chart. Like, it's like there's all this other information behind this, and you feel like it's not doing justice to the report. I've actually tested out for certain reports where I made it simpler than I would have wanted. And I showed them a draft of it, and we heard from leadership, we love this. This is perfect. And I was taken aback because I almost went into it trying to get, we need more.
You put your jaw back up on your mouth.
And it's, because especially if maybe you don't need all that data in the report. That's a discussion for another day. But, it's really honing into, what is someone going to be looking at where they're going to, say, first, does the report show any information where they're going to, provoke an eyebrow raised or say, are we on target? Are we not on target?
Sure.
Or then you go down to, let's say, marketing, where, it's more dived into sources and mediums and ad spend, but again, it's understanding that audience is so just imperative.
Totally would agree. All right, I'll stop interrupting your. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just have to. surely you can't, you have to want more, right?
Yeah,
You know,
it's true.
I would love for people to sound off and let us know, like, what report type do you find the most challenging? Because I would think, knowing myself and being a data guy and whatever, like, there's a tendency for a lot of us to be like, yeah, like probably throwing too much or having challenges around the oversimplified, we call it oversimplified, but distilling
Mhm.
all of that, data down to those meaningful insights, I think just in general is the most challenging, but also, the most effective at that level.
Right. One quick thing on this too is think if you had a report for yourself for building reports, what would go into that? And because one of our user group meetings a few months ago was basically using PowerShell to get the activity and building your usage dashboard. So I obviously developed that, and I initially started really crazy. I'm like, I have rolling 30 days or 14 days, and it was like, okay, but I keep going back to another page where it's really 3 tables and a bar chart to show me, for certain report, because what I thought, I didn't even realize what was going to be important to me is like, okay, what reports are being used by how many people, and like how many days since they've been viewed.
Yep.
And that's kind of where I go to every time. I think there's like 9 pages in the report, and I only look at 2 of them.
Nice. Well,
but
it speaks to like prototype early, like get a very rough draft out there, go really simple to begin with, and again, you can always add more to it. You can always go all in on it. Like, just get something out in people's hands, let them react to it. I think that you make a really good point there, Tommy. I really like that point. I'm gonna steal that one. I'm stolen.
That's fine. Don't worry. There's a video on YouTube that says, "Watch Mike Carlo speak about promotion and governance at the Chicago Platform User Group," and it's me and in my face. So that's okay. You're good.
That's awesome.
All right, let's go back.
Let's go back to the slide deck here. Hold on 1 second. Let me get you up there. All right, you're good to go.
So let's talk about where things go wrong. And I think we've kind of touched on some of this already, but so our first thing is, a lot of times we're focused on that design. If we just have a few visuals, a bar chart and a pivot table, we're like, well, this doesn't tell the person anything. They're going to, I always feel that, and I think for a lot of us is like that. If you just came with something very simple, they'd go, what is this? I don't know. I can't get it. This is so simple. So that's why we're like, oh yeah, if we did a report visual tooltip and that drill through, that's the priority of the report, because that gives them so much more insight. And if we had all these visuals, with a bar chart, you can click on this, and we use the visuals as almost like as a button rather than a visual. And, that becomes clutter. And especially then once we start adding visuals, we're not adding the appropriate titles, and then our metrics suffer, and then no one knows what we're looking at because it says MPS by MYM. And you're like, what in the world is that? So that's one of the kind of misconceptions that, you have to have these visuals, and the features are imperative. Features are only imperative if the user thinks if they're going to be imperative for the user. The other one is kind of going off of that is, if you don't give them all the data in every page, if one of the first reports I built had 7 drill through pages. You can go from this overview page. There's only 1 page in the report, but there are 7 hidden drill through pages that you can drill through, and you can choose the region. Then from your region, you can choose look at the countries. Then you can look at the sales by the country, and then the rep. So having all that, but they had all that data available to them on each page, and they'll figure it out. They'll click around and kind of discover. No, they won't. We don't have to, in a sense, go big right from the start. And as Mike said, when we're sandboxing, when we're doing the development, I think Paul Turley said this, but I call it the spaghetti phase, where it's basically throwing spaghetti at a wall and see what sticks. Where the first thing we do is we say the layout, the names, the colors are all going to change, but we're going to show you 3 different views and try to see what drives inspiration in them. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself, so we'll talk about that. And then the other part is, that everyone's analytically minded, that we have to make it complex, and we have to have these advanced metrics and visuals. So then that goes, a report is what? And, maybe this is also becoming way too philosophical, but, what is a report at the end of the day? to be honest, we've been treating it as we're calling it a product lately. We're calling every report a product, and that's kind of what it is, because you're trying to, views are in a sense transactions, and you're trying to deliver a product that someone's going to use on a frequent basis. And so just going to what's going to be built in that product. When you go on Amazon, you're looking at a few things that are relevant to you at that certain time. And at the same time, a report is that. It's not necessarily a tool, it is that information, but it's going to be a product at the end of the day for the user that they're going to be able to, deliver some value from. And again, going back to that simple idea is if we made it very simple with, 3 data card, if it had 4 visuals on the entire page, how intelligent is that? And like, because after all, this is business intelligence, But again, for the user, for a use case, if they are simply trying to see, there was a product that just got published, how well is it doing compared to the others? And that is the most important thing for this given, quarter. Well, then that's what, that's the intelligence that you can give them. Then you can give insight around it, again, knowing your audience and understanding, where the value is. So let's talk about getting it right. And what can we do to kind of avoid, first and foremost, the things we just talked about is, with the shotgun approach, with all those visuals, it goes back to value and the usefulness for a user. I go back to why isn't someone necessarily using a report, but why would they go back to it? What's going to be part of that report that's going to make them need to come back to that report or want to come back? Again, a lot of times our reports, and stop me if I'm wrong, but a lot of reports can be year to date, previous year, with a data card, KPI, a bar chart trending, with the drill through page with the record of transactions. That's like 80% of a lot of our reports. Great, fine, but where is it going with that? Oh yes, okay. So, but and again, we have this template in mind, and sometimes people can be used to that too. But at the end of the day, what's going to make someone come back? Again, if the sales are, $10,000 for last February, they're going to stay the same. Those aren't changing. So unless that report's kind of geared towards, we have a target to, to beat February, and that's a goal for the company or for that department, that's not as relevant. It's nice to see initially, but, again, I don't need to come back to it for another month, probably, because how much is going to change in a day? So again, dealing on what type of report we're looking at. So how do we actually get to the point where we can build a report where we know our audience and we're providing that value? So next part is the next hat we're going to wear, we're going to become a journalist, and we're going to start interviewing people. And, again, visuals should behave as text does. And we're going to start talking about, interviewing users in terms of before you open any Power BI file, before there's any connection to SQL or a data flow, or you're mapping out the visuals in your head. When you get a request or a project for a certain report, or there's a question that comes up, the first thing that you should do is meet with the stakeholder, the people who requested it, and try to understand what they need. And one thing that I try to say with people, especially who are maybe not the most analytically friendly, or they haven't dealt with a lot of Power BI reports, is forget metrics, forget the visuals, forget a report. What's basically, why did we come to, what are you trying to get at? What are we trying to find? And as you guys said, just what's that impact? What's the impact, and what's going to help you make decisions? So and for a lot of people, it's kind of hard to say too, because they'll just say, well, I just need to see, how many campaign clicks we got. It's like, okay, that's great, but try to get that context and try to ask the right questions. And this is very difficult to do, especially for certain people, certain audiences. But trying to understand what's the trigger point for them, pretty much, where understanding it's a certain campaign that was launched. We're trying, there was a lot that went into it because X, Y, and Z. Then you start through these interviews or the scoping, getting basically some trigger words. that they start saying, and then that can help you kind of highlight the things initially you want to focus on and kind of highlight in the report. And so this interviewee is basically, doing a scoping meeting, and that's you interview and you basically say, okay, what are we trying to do? Again, even outside of a Power BI report, let's not even think about Power BI right now. What's going to help with this particular task? That's going to help you make a better decision, or the insight that you need. Again, it goes back to what is the purpose. Not all reports deserve to be, if it's just a report that someone is going to save someone steps and it's going to take you 10 hours, maybe there's some pushback. Again, not every report, it needs a targeted purpose. And then the next part, yeah.
Tommy, you're hitting on so many good points here. I can't stop. I got to stop you for a second here. So, couple things, right? You mentioned like there's some key words you want to pick up on, and I have some key phrases that I listen for when I'm doing interviews for this kind of stuff. And I'll throw out a couple of mine, and I'd be curious if you guys have some of the same ones. So, things I'm looking for is like things like I need to know my sales like when there's taking like a KPI, sales this month. I want to know the sales year to date. So when we start calling out like time ranges of things, I automatically know we're starting to think about there's some KPIs going on here. There's a lot, I start thinking about comparing things. And the reason I'm looking for these keywords, another one that's really important here is performance. I want to know what my performance is. When you hear the word performance, there's two things that come to mind initially. One is I need to know where I'm at. What am I doing right now?
Yeah.
And then I want to think about where am I going, right? Performance is kind of like, I call it, for lack of better terms, a position. That's where we're at right now. 55 million is what we sold. And then I want the direction. Are we increasing in sales? Is it up 10% versus some period in time? That's performance. And then to your point earlier, Tommy, that you started talking about goals. As soon as someone starts saying goals, you got to start thinking about like, what do we need to hit? And I think it's very easy to get the raw data out, but it's not very intuitive to think about how do I get the goals added in a way that allows me to add those into the data set. Because it's kind of a bit of a hard blend to make sure you can get the goals shaped in a way that makes sense against the data. So those are the kind of things that I look for. I don't know, Seth, Tommy, what kind of key phrases are in your ear that you're going to use to have deeper conversations about?
Yeah, you hit on a lot of them, right? Like when people start talking about, seeing things over time, right? That's where you can easily drive into like, well, how do you look at time, right? Are you comparing things from month over month or from year to date, like to those points, right? Like those are drivers for different visualization types or, buckets, right? Like are they talking in different groups? Like do they have silos within, the org that they start comparing, the sales regions, right? Are there things that I need to group on top of raw data sets? So I'm looking for different things that from a business sense make business sense make sense.
Right.
I know the data, so those are key indicators for me whether or not I need to build in the additional roll-ups or different summarizations of things before presenting that data. How do they, driving into like, how do they view that in terms of separating out what goes in the visual to slicing and dicing, right? Like,
Yeah.
we always look things up by, or, driving into questions of like, do you look at that by region? Do you look at that by person? Do you need to compare those people, or is it just you're looking at everything within the context of that user? And that usually can, lead towards helping you make the decisions around filters versus, a visual representation of the data, things like that.
So
Yeah.
I want to point out here,
Yeah.
Seth, you made a great point here. And Tommy, I think you said earlier in the presentation, like we're not the experts at all these visual things. We don't just know these things. You just don't learn them. There's people who study this. And so one of the links I put in the chat window here is, if you haven't seen it, it's the Power BI Visuals Reference Guide from SQL BI. So good. It gives you a lot of like, when you hear words about comparison, if I'm hearing things about change over time, it ranks and evaluates hundreds, maybe not hundreds, tens of visuals that are available on desktop and in the store to help you pick which ones might make the most sense for whatever your visuals are doing. So I threw that link in there just in case you want to see it. It's super good. I use it all the time. I give it to everyone I teach around Power BI because I feel like this is you don't know what you don't know. and there are experts that are already doing a lot of good things in this space. Check that thing out. It's free. You can just go get it. Sorry, Tommy, you were going to say.
No, and it's the same way, like almost like what comes first, the visual or the data?
Correct.
And not necessarily the data, but like
it's
the
a chicken
KPI.
and egg.
So one of the things that, again, like that I really try to pry out of people are when I'm looking for it, it's not even like, I need to see the sales by product. It's basically trying to understand, okay, so this is a campaign report. It's like, well, we're trying to figure out, it's like what's important to the person who's going to be looking at it, and asking them, like, if it's the stakeholder, let's say it's managers, like, okay, what's important for the team? Like, what are they doing right now? It's like, if you're building a campaign report, like, well, what are they focusing on right now? It's like, well, they're really focusing on Earth Day, and we're doing a promotion for this. So to me, those initial words is campaign is integral here. Mm-hmm. So looking at campaign performance, then you can kind of understand based on the words being said, like, are we trying to compare campaigns? Are we trying to look at campaigns versus the objective of the campaign, or how much effort was put into a campaign?
And you're picking up those keywords, and you're asking more, another layer deeper, like, because you're thinking like, campaign, but like, how do you put a campaign on a chart? Like, what are we talking about? Right. And I think I like the questions you're asking. You're actually asking the next layer of questions to say, I want to try and get you into, is this a trend? Are we talking about a comparison? Because that changes. That helps you shape bar chart or line chart.
Right.
Like you're already picking out with the questions what they need, as opposed to letting them come to you and say, I want this table and it has all this data in it. Give me these columns and I'm done. Like, because we're not in the business of making tables of data for you.
And think about, for everyone on the call and for you guys too, think about the decision tree split on what your report would look like if someone said, we need to see what campaign performed the best, or someone said, we need to see if it's worth putting the effort in this campaign.
Yes.
It's going to be the same data set.
Yep.
But that's a very different report in terms of, you can already start visualizing. Like I know I did it, but this is obviously a real example. But in that terms of what that visuals look like, and then if you got that wrong, so to speak, and now I'm going to make everyone afraid at night now, but like, if you didn't get that question right, where you're comparing campaigns and trending over time,
sure.
But the real important thing to someone was, is this campaign worth the effort that the marketing team's putting in?
Yeah.
And that's a very different report with the same data.
I like that. So another technique I'll do here, I'll just throw this out here because I've used this a number of times in like workshop activities. When you're building a report, if your project is solely around building a report, do like a post-it note activity. And I love people standing up and talking about things that are going on. And so what we'll do is, here's the activity is, give everyone a post-it note, and everyone has a pen, so everyone has a voice. And so the idea here is you have them write down their insight, define what that is. I want to see trends over time. I need to see comparison of my sales representative to some other sales representative. I want to look at, sorry, Tommy, what was that keyword you were saying? That wasn't performance. It was market campaign. It was, yeah. I want to see. No, it was okay. I want to see campaigns. Campaign volume, campaign hits, campaign users, whatever those key insights are, whatever you're trying to look for, have them just write it down. Every idea is a good idea. Put it on the wall. Just peanut butter the wall is just a bunch of post-it notes. And then what you do is, after everyone has exhausted all the ideas, every idea is a good idea, and come back to that and look on the wall. And then you start picking off the post-it notes that seem to match, that go together. And what you'll quickly find is, there are subject matters. There are content areas that kind of congregate. And so you put those post-it notes in a group, right? Here's all the things that are campaign related. Here's all the things that are performance related. And you can kind of start seeing these bubbles form. And when I look at that, there's usually like a KPI one that's like high level aggregations of stuff, right? And that's your overview page. That's what we want to see on the big page. And then you look across the other pages, and we've got all these other little segments that you can say, these are now pages in my report. And then you start thinking about, okay, now how do I take these three bubbles and think about, how do I link them back together? What would I navigate from the overview page into these other pages? So it's a very touchy-feely kind of exercise, but it really helps people not think about the colors, not think about the page layout, not think about all these other things that are distractions. I think at this point is to go back to like, what is really going to drive usage of the report? And answering these people questions way before we even get into Power BI or even look at the data, we write those down first. I think it really helps like center your thoughts around the report.
No, absolutely. And one thing that we always do now is, I don't think I can't remember the last time I built a report without doing the sandbox version. Again, I think this was a blog article by Paul Turley, and he talked about the 2 phases of report development that he did. And we will go into scoping, have the interview, the scoping, and then our next meeting will usually be like, some short time after that. And it's basically, we're saying we're in the sandbox phase.
Yeah.
We're playing in the sandbox.
Yep.
This report, you don't even put a theme. You make it almost look ugly, but you basically show here's some of the data, and you let them know. It's like, here's some of the data that we have here.
Yes.
Is this important? And because the goal, like what I'm trying to do is I'm almost fishing for inspiration where I'm showing them this, and I have the desktop. I don't have it public. I have it published for them later, but I have it open in the desktop because what I want to do is say, hey, is this helpful? They go, well, no, because, we really care about, looking at the ad cost. Like, oh, you mean like this? And you can just drag it and then show them, like, what if we did this? And trying to, when I see someone go, yeah, and then that what if I get the question, if I get that statement, what if from someone, I know I'm home free. Because someone said, like, what if, could you do this? Or what if we did this? And that's starting to understand. Now that person's understanding, okay, like what's going to be really important to them.
Yeah.
So having that live sandbox and, kind of that iteration of, doing it live with them, playing the sandbox is huge, especially in the beginning.
Digging it. That's super cool. All right. Sorry. I didn't mean to distract you more, Tommy, but I felt like there were some really key points in there that like they're hitting home with what I'm doing. Like, and it's daily activities around when we're talking reports. This is the kind of stuff that we're talking about. And we're trying to get people to stop being distracted by the visuals and start thinking about like the bigger picture sometimes.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie. Every time you've said, hey, Tom, I got to stop you, I'm always expecting you to go, you've been really choppy. We didn't get that. But,
no, so far it's been good. It's holding up. It's holding up. All right. I'm going to go back over the slides, Tommy. All right. You're back over on the slides. You're good.
No problem. So we're going to dive through this a little quicker because I think we did talk about this just a little.
I think we did. I might have led you in some points here. Okay. Sorry, Tommy.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. So, basically, we talked about that, making sure that these dashboards can drive decisions. We talked about identifying a stakeholder, and having that interview meeting, like who's going to be intimately involved that knows both sides, who knows the data somewhat, and is also kind of be responsible for the report or whatever the project is. Again, if it's, the product is the product manager for a certain, category of the team, that we do books. So this is the book manager, whatever you want to call it. So they're intimately involved on both sides. Again, so understanding who's going to be involved, who's going to be looking at the report, and then understand, like, what does this report serve? One thing I always like to do with people, I don't remember where this came from, and I don't think it was in a BI setting, but it was more, if you had $1 million, all the money in the world, what does success look like? Like, let's say, let's say the 3 of us decided we were going to go in on something. To me, the best way to say, is it successful or not? It's like, we're high-fiving in a year from now. Why? Like, and that's basically from a report, like, you're looking at this report every day and you couldn't be happier. Why? Like, what is this report doing for you? If we had everything available to you, that's one question that you really want to try to get out of is, what is successful like? What would they have? And then always write it down. Right? Once you have these conversations, you have these sandbox meetings, follow up with an email, follow up in Teams, follow up in your ticket system saying, hey, based on the call today, here's what we're going to focus on. We're focusing on X, Y, and Z. We're going to build out a details page. We're going to only show active users, etc. And we'll follow up and getting that person, allowing to say, no, that's not as important. We're getting them to sign off on that. So document them and empower them. And I think that goes back to the sandboxing, where they actually have a voice in that, and then also making sure that they sign off and they know what's coming as well. So let's talk real quickly about that sandbox again. Use the tools early, test out those KPIs, make it interactive rather than here's a report. What do you think? Literally show them 4 pages of 4 ideas that you had of, we showed trending here. Here's a pivot table that you can sort and filter, and then here's I'm not gonna say pie chart, but here's a nightingale chart. Whatever you want to
No
call
pie
it, kind of
charts.
thing.
No pie
It's like,
charts.
and you can start to get from that person, this is overwhelming, this is not important, or that, well, what if you did this, or understanding what they like. So use the tools early, use desktop early, and allow them to be inspired. Try to show some use cases. Hey, here's some things we've done for the finance team. Does this work? Is this what you're saying? Is it, trying to say, like, is this what you're trying to get at? Is this trying to just understand, does it work? Help them provide that purpose. So last thing is our best practices and establishing strategies. Actually, before this, I'm going to go back to here with this inspiration. So one thing is, I thought about this, but I forgot to add it in my notes. That's okay, because I thought about it last night. Is the incentive for a user to go back to a report. It's what we all do. Like, it's part of that value, and it works. It works for the user. If it came out in a medical study that exercise actually made you more overweight and less healthy, you're probably not going to see a lot of people running in the morning. Some people like to run, but at the end of the day, there's an incentive to do so. There's a purpose, there's a reason, there's an end goal, there's a means to the end. A report is not the end. It's a means to some end. And that's where inspiration comes from, and that goes back to, does this work? So the report is a middle bridge towards a decision. It's not that end goal. So obviously usage is important, but to be honest, for some reports, it's a weekly thing to look at. It's a report that should be looked at during meetings to kind of look at that monitoring, but it provides value in that sense. So, it's, again, what is the purpose of what is going to be the value, and what purpose is it going to serve at the end of the day for that user? So some best practices, we're just going to kind of go through this, and then we'll do the Q&A, but make sure, if you really want your reports to be successful, there's obviously a lot more than just this, but I really, really encourage you guys to keep and, establish a process at your company, your firm, agency, wherever you're at, where everyone knows the expectation of, I request a report, it has to go through the ticket system. If someone asks me when I'm getting water or on Slack, then it doesn't matter because it's not in the ticket system. So someone always has to submit a ticket. There's always going to be a scoping meeting. There's going to be a sandbox report. No one's going to say, hey, we need this report by Monday. It has to go through the process. Establish a process and a culture for the BI team. And if the BI team is just Jim and you're still a BI team. And it's still established that saying, you have to go through this. We have to do this. The other part of this, too, is training. So you go through this whole thing, the stakeholder and the two other people love the report, and you're going to publish it to 30 people. Well, guess what? Those 30 people have not seen this report yet. And, it may have a drill through, it may not, but they've never seen this report. And if all of a sudden you just, share the link, say, hey, you now have access to the, tactical email campaign report. Okay. No one's going to necessarily be running to it unless you're literally judged on your job for email campaigns, but the other 29 people who it may be valuable for are not necessarily going to be running to look at it. They have what they need to do. So we always do, and I always really recommend this, is any report that's, somewhat significant, rather if it's just built for maybe 3 people, you don't need to do this, but we always do roadshows, and we always say, okay, when the report's ready to be published, we get the sign off from the stakeholder. We say, okay, who's going to need access to it? We get that list. We schedule a webinar on Zoom. We record it, and we basically go through, hey, this is the BI team. Here's some updates in Power BI. Did you know you could do this? Here's have the stakeholder on going, hey, do you mind talking about what this report is and why it's important for the team? And then let's do some demos. We always ask the stakeholder, what demos do you want me to do? If you could actually look at emails last month and, try to see which ones have the best open rate, how would you do that? Go through a few demos and empower the users, train them, and then give them access to the report so they actually know what they're looking at. Giving users support and saying, oh, by the way, if you want one-on-one training, go to this site, or email us at, bitteam@work.com, and we'll schedule one-on-one time with you. So those are part of the things that also are part of that success overall for a larger, more than just one person, is that understanding of what they're looking at and how to use it. And then finally is how do you actually repeat this and know you're doing it. So if you're on the right track, we deal with data all the day. We deal with data all day. We should have data points for ourselves to collect. So, Power BI is the PowerShell module that you can, if you're a Power BI admin, you can connect to it, and you don't have to be a global administrator of Office. You can store your data locally rather than the usage reports. So you can do whatever, you just, store local data over time, being able to understand what's being used, who the people that ask for it, are they looking at it, highlight those reports and trying to get feedback. And like I said, this is all tied into that Power Automate visual, because now you have that the Net Promoter Score, you have surveys. Do you meet with the teams to say, does the report meeting your needs? Because you can highlight those reports going, hey, had a lot of views in the first 2 weeks that really dropped off. Reach out to the stakeholder, go, hey, notice the report's not getting a lot of views. Do you want to kind of go through what we can do to improve it? So the strategy is just as important. And I know when it says, why are people not looking at your visuals? Why aren't people looking at your dashboards? Part of this helps you also improve to understand your audience as well. So going back, we talked about misconceptions around here, the visuals, the audience, the process, the value, behavior, and finally just understanding engaging success. So this is obviously just a minuscule part of what makes something successful, especially in what we do. But I hope today this was something that you could provide some value and just a starting point on establishing some processes and, going into your reports, going into what you do, and, driving that purpose. So thank you so much. And I'm sure, hopefully there's some Q&A if this was valuable at all. So we'll go into that.
So we're going to transition. So what we're going to do here, this is kind of, we're going to take a cue out of the Power BI user group in Milwaukee. So what we do is we do the YouTube thing first. This is the one that's kind of live. Everyone can see Tommy talking and the chat section. So now what we're going to do is I've got a link here already on my other screen. I'm going to put it in the chat window, and we would like to invite everyone who's attending, come join, talk with us. You can turn on your cameras if you want. It's not being recorded. This will just be us doing Q&A together. Pick Tommy's brain. Tell Seth he has a bunch of bad ideas. You can pat me on my back if you'd like. I mean, to be totally whatever you want to do. It'll be off the record. And so let me paste the link right now. So for those of you who are watching, thank you very much for joining us. I want to super thank Tommy. Great presentation. Thank you for letting us interrupt you and throw a bunch of random things in your way. You handled it like a pro. That's why you're an MVP for sure. So with that, I will dump this link into, so join the conversation over here. And what will happen is this is a link to a Teams meeting. It's just a straight, anyone can join as a guest. You don't have to be a user in my tenant or anything like that. You can just join. It's a free link. And then once you get in, Seth and Tommy will let you into the user group Teams chat, and we can just hang out and chit chat as long as you want, or at least until I get tired and go to bed. So here is the link for the Teams event. So Teams event.
And we'll do the Bruce. Yeah, so we've been doing this with Chicago because once you guys met, it was like, this is so much better. So we do the live event, and then we do the Teams meeting. So we also try to grab a drink as well.
Yeah,
so
I have. I'm gonna be a little late because I'm gonna go upstairs and get some alcohol somewhere. That's gonna be a.
That's what I'm gonna do. Everyone, encouraging you to drink on a Tuesday. So.
Great presentation, Tommy.
Great presentation.
Thank you guys.
Everyone, thank you very much for attending.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.